The first point of education to review is non-basketball moves, and we will start with an offensive player abnormally extending part of his body into his opponent. The highlighted offensive player, Karl Anthony Towns, takes a jump shot and he extends his right leg in an overt manner. By doing so, he initiates illegal contact with the defender, Kelly Olynyk, tripping him and sending him to the floor. As this is clearly more than marginal contact, this is correctly ruled an offensive foul on Towns. Now let's look at another play where a shooter extends part of his body outside his normal motion to shoot. The offensive player here, Spencer Dinwiddie, extends his right leg out and he makes marginal contact with the defender, Kyrie Irving. Note that since this is only marginal contact initiated by Dinwiddie, this correctly results in a no call, and it is a play-on situation. The next play in this section will show contact after a shot fake that results in a defensive foul. After the shot fake by the offensive player, Marcus Morris Sr., the defensive player, Juan Toscano Anderson, moves forward and he moves into Morris right as Morris starts his upward motion to shoot. We can see that Morris did not make any abnormal or overt movement into Toscano Anderson, and since the contact on this play is more than marginal, it is correctly ruled a defensive foul. The next type of non-basketball move that we will review is a dribbler abruptly veering off his path and moving sideways or backwards into a defender. The highlighted dribbler here, Garrison Matthews, abruptly moves to his right, initiating illegal contact with his defender, Luke Kennard. This contact by Matthews is more than marginal, as it clearly affects Kennard's ability to defend the play, and it was correctly ruled an offensive foul. Next, we will see another example of illegal contact between a dribbler and his defender. The dribbler here, DeLon Wright, drives toward the basket, and while Wright continues on his path to the basket, the moving defender, TJ McConnell, moves into Wright's path and he initiates illegal contact. And while this play was ruled at the time to be an offensive foul on Wright, the correct ruling here would be a defensive foul on McConnell. The final type of non-basketball move to review is contact between an offensive player and his defender, where the offensive player uses his off arm to initiate illegal contact. Here, the dribbler, Dylan Brooks, uses his off arm to hook the arm of the defender, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. This illegal contact clearly affects Alexander Walker's ability to continue defending the play, and an offensive foul on Brooks was correctly called on this play by the slot official. The next point of education to review is traveling. This first play will show an example of an offensive player taking too many steps after gathering the ball. The offensive player, Kyrie Irving, gathers the ball with his right foot on the floor, and he then commits a traveling violation by taking more than the allowed 2 steps before releasing the ball on his shot attempt. Remember, players are only allowed 2 steps after ending their dribble and gathering the ball. A traveling violation was needed on this play. This next play will show another example of an offensive player committing a traveling violation on the perimeter. Here, the offensive player, Bradley Beal, establishes his left foot as his pivot foot, but as he starts his move to the basket, he drags that left foot, moving it forward prior to releasing the ball on the dribble. A traveling violation needed to be called on this play. Our final example in the traveling section shows a violation that occurs after the offensive player has gathered the ball. The offensive player, Jaylen Brown, drives toward the basket, and after he gathers the ball, he then takes more than the allowed 2 steps before releasing the ball on the field goal attempt. The replay clearly shows Brown gathering the ball on his left foot, and he then steps with his right, then his left, and finally with his right foot again for an illegal 3rd step. This is a traveling violation, and it was correctly called here. The next point of education to review is freedom of movement. Here, the highlighted defensive player, Joe Harris, steps to his right and he moves into the path of his moving opponent, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Harris delivers a blow with his shoulder. This off-ball contact by Harris is clearly illegal, and the defensive foul is correctly called by the slot official. Another example of a defender affecting an offensive player's freedom of movement can be seen here. The highlighted defensive player, Lonnie Walker IV, grabs and holds his opponent, Rudy Gobert, affecting Gobert's freedom of movement as he attempts to roll to the basket. This is illegal contact by Walker, and the defensive foul was correctly called. The final play in this section is an example of an offensive foul where a defensive player's freedom of movement is affected. The highlighted offensive player, Karis LeVert, pushes off his legal defender, Franz Wagner, in an attempt to create space to receive a pass. This contact initiated by LeVert is more than marginal, and an offensive foul is correctly called by the lead official. As we know, the freedom of movement guidelines extend from the perimeter into the post area. Areas of enforcement include wraps, holds, and dislodges. Here, the highlighted defensive player, Jason Tatum, wraps his left arm around the waist of the offensive player, Evan Mobley, as Mobley looks to receive the entry pass. This illegal wrap by Tatum was correctly ruled a defensive foul by the slot official. Next, we will look at an example of illegal contact initiated by an offensive player in the post. The highlighted offensive player, Jonas Valanciunas, uses his left arm to initiate illegal contact with his legal defender, JaVale McGee, as Valanciunas wipes away McGee's legal arm. Note that McGee's arm was in a legal defensive position with his hand on the back of Valanciunas when Valanciunas then wiped it away. This is illegal contact by Valanciunas, and the offensive foul was correctly called. The next part of the freedom of movement guidelines to review is contact on screens. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Brandon Clark, moves to set a screen, but he then extends both arms and he pushes the on-ball defender, Dorian Finney-Smith. This illegal contact clearly affects Finney-Smith's ability to play defense, and the offensive foul was called correctly by the trail official. Next, we will see an example of an illegal screen set against a moving opponent. The highlighted offensive player, Anthony Davis, does not give his opponent, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, an opportunity to avoid the contact, and an illegal screen was correctly called. To be considered legal, the screener must get directly in his opponent's path and give him the opportunity to avoid contact. The speed of the defender will determine the distance that the screener must give to avoid contact. This next play is another example of an illegal screen set against a moving opponent. The highlighted offensive player, Klay Thompson, does not give his moving opponent, Isaac Okoro, an opportunity to avoid contact, and an illegal screen needed to be called on this play. Again, to be considered legal, the screener must get directly into the opponent's path and give him the opportunity to avoid contact. The next type of illegal screen that we will see involves a dribble handoff. The highlighted offensive player, John Collins, hands the ball off to his teammate, DeJounte Murray, but he continues moving forward and he moves into the path of the trailing defender, Jalen Brunson. Collins clearly does not give Brunson the opportunity to avoid the contact here, and the offensive foul was correctly called.